Mandatory provisions are those parts of a statute that are compulsory. These are not advisory or optional or suggestions. Wherever they are applicable, they have to be followed. Not following a mandatory provision may lead to an action or a transaction being deemed as illegal, void, or unenforceable, or it may lead to certain penalties. For example, if your taxable income crosses a certain threshold, you need to pay taxes and file tax returns. This is not optional. It is mandatory, and not doing so can lead to interest, fines, and other penalties. Or the Contract Act may set out some provisions that are essential for a valid contract, and not following them can lead to the contract being declared as null and void. To identify whether a provision is mandatory or directory, we can use some basic guidelines, such as if non-compliance with some provisions leads to some penalties, results in some liabilities, or has some negative effects on some rights, then it is a mandatory provision. Or if a provision has the words must, shall, or ought to, then it is an indication that it is a mandatory provision. Or by reading the provision contextually, what is its position within the statute? What is its relationship with other statutes? We can identify if a provision is mandatory or not. The process of interpretation of mandatory statutes, as usual, starts with the application of the usual primary and secondary rules. And depending on the purpose or the nature of the statute, either strict or beneficial construction is followed. And in every step of the interpretation process, we should validate the interpretation against the presumptions, such as the presumption that the legislature would not have made unconstitutional laws or intentionally created absurd laws.